Right, good morning, welcome back. Now time for a fresh project, a new bike in the stable. So what have we got? Honda CB1300. This was Honda's entry into the Japanese muscle bike race, along with the XJR 1300 from Yamaha, the GSX 1400 from Suzuki, and the ZRX 1200 from Kawasaki. Now these four bikes don't exist in a vacuum like a single standalone genre, not at all. They all have a historic bloodline that can be traced back model by model to the 1970s, where Japanese motorcycle market domination truly began. Now those of you who watch the channel for some time will know that we've already had a GSX 1400 just recently and two XJR 1300s, one of them a turbo, go through the channel as short projects, and those projects resonate wonderfully with those of you who have the same bike. So hopefully this will be the same, a short sharp project on a commonly owned muscle bike that hopefully will pass on a lot of tips and tricks to those of you who've also got one. Now, as with all projects, I am entirely led by what the bike needs and whether I want to change the way the bike looks. And with this, well, I don't want to change the way it looks. I think that the bodywork on all of the big muscle bikes is absolutely perfect. I just love the lines of the way the bodywork is. I'm not going to be hacking bits off or chopping around, and I love the colour, as you might imagine. I'm not going to change that. So there'll be no paint job on this one. I think we ticked the box on the recent Harley project and everybody loved that. Thank you so much for your wonderful support on that. And this, by contrast, will be a little bit more staid, but definitely more practical. I'm just planning some cheeky accessories here and there, swap the handlebars maybe, nice fat bar conversion, some work on the forks is needed, and of course the routine maintenance that all these bikes need. When you first buy yourself a new bike, you can guarantee that the previous owner has sold it right at the time when it needs a service. So today, I want to have a good look around the bike and do the traditional survey of what the bike needs first. Now, I think with any motorcycle, when you buy it, you've got to do that 360 check all the way around the bike. Make sure everything that is adjustable is adjusted to within spec and safe, and of course check all the fluids as well. So we'll start with that, and first of all, the oil. There it is, bang on. Now the oil level's correct because I set it that way, because when I rode the bike home from buying it about a week ago, I went to check the oil and I couldn't see the top of the oil level. So I set it on the side stand in order to pull it towards me and see where it was, maybe a bit overfilled, and it was perfectly level on the side stand. So somebody prior to me had topped the oil up to the correct level but on the side stand, which is not correct. It must be upright. So it had too much oil in. So I put a tube in it, sucked out the excess oil, and it was a full litre of oil that shouldn't have been in there. Now the level's correct. Now that's not as terrifying as it sounds. It is okay for oil to be a little tiny bit overfilled. Better that than far too low. And obviously the worst consequence is going to be the clutch gets sticky and claggy because it's sticking the plates together, and it was a little bit like that and it's much better now. But also any excess oil will get blown out of the rocker cover at the top through the engine breather and into the air filter, and I dread to think what state the air filter is going to be in when we get in there to change it. Anyway, for now the oil level's correct. And there's something else I want to show you about this particular bike that I think is wonderful. Now this particular model, like quite a few others, has this tiny little screw in the center of the oil sight glass. And what is that for? If you ever wondered, it's a windscreen wiper. You know, you get that coating of emulsified oil vapor on the inside of the sight glass. It appears to be like a yellowy white mayonnaise, sticky stuff on the inside, and it prevents you from seeing the oil level. Well, with this, all you have to do is pop a flat bladed screwdriver in the screw and turn it a full turn in either direction a few times, and it clears the screen. Because on the inside of the glass there's a little rubber arm pressing against it, and when you turn the screw it wipes it round in a circle, clearing the emulsion. Isn't that clever? So with the oil level now known to be correct, the oil I drained out was as black as the night sky and really thin. So I'm definitely going to change the oil and filter. We'll put that on the list first. Now the coolant level is correct. As with all liquid cooled bikes, which you have an expansion bottle on, you'll find there's an upper and lower level. And this bike at the moment is right between the two, but the engine is quite cool. So I know that's correct. And looking at the service history of this bike, the coolant was changed just under a year ago. So that's good to leave for the moment. Okay, we'll get the fluid tester and a JIS screwdriver. And we'll check the clutch and brake fluid. Okay, let's test the fluid. Dip it all the way in. Boom, straight to red. Now, obviously that needs changing, so you would always change all three, but I'll check them anyway. Now the clutch fluid's as black as the engine oil, so I think this is a foregone conclusion, but let's see anyway. All the way in. Yeah, there's a surprise. Now obviously, if your hydraulic units function like your brakes and your clutch and they're all working fine, it is still, I find people neglect them because I guess they take the mentality, well, they're working fine, why do I need to change the fluid? It's not leaking. Well, just a quick, I don't know, explanation of why it's important every 2 years to change your hydraulic fluids. When they're .4, hydroscopic, they absorb water from the atmosphere. That means that the water content in the fluid builds up and the properties of brake fluid are diminished. Now I think simply put, the boiling point of brake fluid is massively high, but the boiling point of water is obviously 100 degrees, way lower. So as you brake, the contents of your hydraulic system get hot, and if you've got a lot of water content in there, that means that the boiling point is lowered, it's reduced. So that means that then the brake fluid that's up against the back of the pistons in the calipers, as it gets hot with friction under braking, especially extreme braking, it will start to boil. That fluid will reach its boiling point and start to form steam. And you know when you boil a pan of water to put boiled eggs in, you get that carpet of bubbles on the bottom before it starts to properly boil. That's referred to as a steam jacket, and it carpets the surface or the bottom surface of the pan. It's the same thing in your brake pistons in the caliper. You get those bubbles of steam on the back of it where it's hottest, and they're spongy, so you start to get brake fade. So that is why it's really important to change your brake fluid every 2 years on cue. Now with the front two being as bad as they are, is there any point in checking the rear? No, not really. I'm going to change it anyway, and even if it was perfect, I'd still change it because I want all three fluids on the same time date so I know when to change them again. So I'm not going to waste my time bothering checking that. You know it's going to fail anyway. All right, next thing's the chain. When you're looking at your chain and sprockets to check it, then you check obviously for tension, and this one feels a little bit tight, and you check for wear and tear. And I think I've already made a short in this in the past. When you check the wear and tear on a chain, grab it here on the back of the sprocket at sort of 3 o'clock as you look at it, and pull it off the sprocket and see how much free play there is. Pulling it towards you, and if the chain itself can be lifted off the sprocket at this point on the back, then that means that the teeth are wearing thin and this whole chain is wiggling backs and forwards on its sprocket, and that indicates wear. Now this particular chain absolutely doesn't move at all, it's rock solid, but that's because the chain's too tight, and that's with the wheel off the ground. So again, like the oil being overfilled, this chain is hugely over tightened. Now that in itself is always a problem. It's never good to over tighten your chain. Now I hear a lot of people say that I'd rather have a chain too loose than too tight. I see the logic in that, but it's not strictly correct, because all chains should be adjusted into that correct Goldilocks zone where they have the correct up and down free play. If you have a dirt bike with long rear suspension travel, then it does need to be looser, but it still has that Goldilocks point. It still has a correct adjustment, as does a road bike. If they're too tight, it's putting all kinds of unnecessary load on the gearbox output, bearing, also the chain itself against the sprocket. The way I can't move that, it's being ground against that really hard, so it's literally going to wear the sprockets out far sooner, and that's expensive. And too loose is bad as well because it causes vibration, it causes notchy gear changes, and again it can lead to excessive wear because the chain's lashing around without being held in its correct tension. So always make sure your chain's correctly tensioned, and this one is not. It is way too tight. If I set the tension on this, if I drop the bike off the stand, that would be like I could sing a tune on it. So I'll deal with that, loosen it off, set it to its correct tension, clean it, lube it, and then we'll see if it needs replacing. I don't think it does though. Right, next, give all 3 sets of brake pads a check and make sure they're within tolerance. All right, now brakes. From riding the bike, I know that they function properly. In fact, the brakes are fantastic on this, no complaints at all. So a close look at them will also tell me how much wear and tear they've had and how much life they've got left. Now, when you buy a set of brake pads, generally speaking, they'll have the same amount of soft friction material as the thickness of the backplate itself. So if you look in there and the backplate and the wear material are the same thickness, then you know that they're almost brand new. And when I look in there, they're about half. So I can guess that these back brake pads are about halfway through their life. So I would guess they're going to be worth about another 3,000 miles before I've got to worry about them. And at 30 odd pounds a pair, I'm quite happy to let them wear out. So the rears, absolutely fine. Now the fronts are a different story. They are a little bit less than half of the thickness of the back pad. There's probably about 3 mil, 2.5, 3 mil in the thickness of the soft material left. So what I'm going to do, I think, is because the fronts are the lion's share of the braking force, I'm going to give those just a couple more months of riding and enjoying the bike, and I think I'll replace them just for the sake of it. And while I'm at it, the same concept as the fluids as well. If I'm going to replace the fronts, even though the rears are only half worn, I think I'll replace all 3 pairs at the same time because it gives you that opportunity to take the caliper off, clean it all out thoroughly, lubricate everything that needs to be done and put them back in. So a brake service will put that at the end of the project. Fine. All right, next I think we'll do a bearings check. We learned on the XJR project that the swing arm bearings were absolutely shot. That was 40,000 miles. This bike is significantly less than that at 30,000, but it's always worth checking because the reason the XJR swing arm bearings were shot was probably because they've been jet washed or pressure washed in that area and washed all the grease out and corroded the bearings. So it's always worth checking whatever the mileage on the bike. All right, first of all, we'll check the rear end, and this does 2 sets of bearings at the same time. Grab hold of the wheel and we're moving it sideways in a lateral direction to see if there's any play in the swing arm, which has bearings here at the front, and also on the wheel itself, which has bearings there. If there's any play anywhere when you do that, with the wheel off the ground, obviously, then there's a problem. And on this one, nothing whatsoever. Absolutely perfect. And you can also check a wheel bearing by holding it top and bottom and rotating in that direction, and that's also perfect. Get the front wheel off the deck. All right, now to check headstock bearings, I've done this so many times. Basically, get hold of the fork legs at the bottom with the wheel off the ground, and you're moving in this direction, backwards and forwards, to check if the forks move on the 2 bearings in the headstock, and they are perfect, nothing at all. And also, I've done a full sweep lock to lock check, and that tells you there's no notchiness, no click in the center that would then indicate that the bearings in the headstock are wearing, and these are absolutely bang on. And the same goes for the check on the wheel bearings as was on the rear. Check it that way. So you're rotating the wheel side to side, grab a spoke top and bottom, and in line with the fork so it holds it. Nothing. They're lovely. Excellent. Now this next check doesn't apply to any bike with twin shocks, so it wouldn't actually apply to this Honda, but it does apply to anything with a monoshock. So a Suzuki Bandit, any sports bike with a monoshock, and a short link underneath, because the short link has several, in fact 6 needle roller bearings inside it, and like any bearings they wear. So the way to check them is really simple. Get the bike suspended with the rear wheel off the ground, but you mustn't use the suspension. Let the suspension drop right down. So a paddock stand doesn't work. If you've got a main stand, fantastic. Otherwise, get it supported under the frame somewhere so the wheel drops completely free. And then you check your monoshock short link like this. Lean your body on the seat and then reach underneath with both arms either side and grab hold of the wheel rim and lift it. you're literally lifting the wheel to see if there's any free play in the swing arm up and down. And on this bike there won't be because it's got twin shocks, but if you had a monoshock, you're feeling for a little bit of free play. And even the tiniest bit of up and down movement, like a couple of mil, is enough to indicate that the short link bearings are worn. And when they're worn, it means that the up and down movement in the suspension is subject to a chatter when you're riding along, and it's going to affect the handling adversely and possibly could be dangerous. So if you have got that little bit of free play, make sure you swap the needle roller bearing system as well, and we have plenty of videos on that. Right there, we have a comprehensive list. We've got a chain to clean and adjust and set it back within spec. Also oil and filter, because it is as black as under the bed. Also clutch and brake fluid to change. That's appallingly bad, so we'll do all three of those. Also 3 sets of brake pads. I think honestly with the way the front ones are almost out, I don't want to risk it. These are a big heavy bike and they're fast as well. So 3 sets of brake pads for sure. Right, now I think we'll change the air filter as well. I don't know whether it needs doing, I haven't looked at it, but it probably will do because it was a litre overfilled with oil, meaning that oil vapour from the rocker cover would have blown into the airbox and probably soaked it. So I'll change that for good measure. Right, the next thing I think we'll do the fork oil as well. On every single motorcycle I've wheeled into this garage, I have never yet found a motorcycle that doesn't need the fork oil changed. It is a 2-year periodical, exactly like the brake fluid. So as that is as bad as it is, it's highly likely they've never been touched and they will smell of rotten eggs. So we'll do the fork oil as well. And I've got another little upgrade to the forks at the same time. So we'll actually strip them out to do that job this time, make a proper job of it, and we'll do a little upgrade when we put them back together. And I think while we're at it, we'll do a tech fat bar conversion. I've got a Tech Bike Parts fat bar kit over there on the shelf. It's a fat set of clamps and the 28mm motocross style bars. They look absolutely superb on big muscle bikes, and they're black alloy bars as well. So we'll do that conversion while we're at it. And I think while we're there, we'll do a hot grips install at the same time. Nice for those late night rides home from the pub. And I think finally for the list for now, some engine protection. I'll show you what I mean. And I think we all know that with these universal Japanese motorcycles with these big casings sticking out the side, they're all pretty much the same, all 4 manufacturers. That is really vulnerable. If the bike falls over just on the stand or something static, that's going to crack the casing at worst, if not scuff it, and that can be expensive to replace. But really bad if you're going up the road at the time, the front low sides, and the bike literally slides down the highway on its side at speed, because the damage that that can cause to a bike is catastrophic. And I'm not overstating that one little bit. Back in my motorcycle trade career, we used to do damage estimates for bikes that had been in a crash. And we've seen a few bikes where all of this has been wiped off the side of the engine, just been destroyed. And inside there, there's a spigot that spins the alternator. That's the end of the crankshaft, and it bends the crankshaft and writes the engine off. And on a bike that's only worth 2 or 3 grand, well, that just writes the entire bike off, all but for the want of a crash bar. Now, why these bikes never came with them from the factory is beyond me. You can get those plastic bungs that stick out here, and there are many of those on the market, but they're still aftermarket. They're not something the factory fitted in the first place. And Triumph do a great upgrade where you can buy a casing armor plate cover, which actually screws to the casing itself and armor plates it. So that's a good move in the right direction. Well done, Triumph. But generally speaking, this is still a massively vulnerable area that should always be protected. So I think for this bike, I'm going to hunt around on the market and find a really good quality pair of crash bars, because again, in my former motorcycle trade career, I remember seeing bikes that had been slid down the road with crash bars on, and they've completely flattened those crash bars into the engine and still destroyed the casing. So it's important when you put crash bars on, they're not decorative ones for looks only. They must be strongly made and for the purpose of grinding down the highway in the event of the worst happening. So I'm going to get some decent quality crash bars, and they will be part of the project. So there we are, Honda CB1300 project, day 1, a full walk round and a survey of everything I need. I've got my shopping list, so I'll get all that ordered. Join us in the next video and we'll make a start.